The following program contains the opinions of the host, guests, and call-in participants. These do not necessarily represent the views of this show's distributors or sponsors. This program may contain obscene, profane, or otherwise objectionable language. Viewer discretion is advised. So the real question is, how perky can a 68-year-old man be at 10 o'clock at night? I'll tell you, pretty fucking perky. I got it going on. It's Wednesday, April 17th, 2024. It's 11 p.m. on the East Coast of the United States, 8 p.m. on the West Coast, 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Sydney, Australia, and 10 p.m. Central Daylight Time, where I'm sitting here in Northeast Minneapolis, Minnesota. I am Jim Peters, and this is another edition of Jim Peters at Night. And if I'm right, I saw the episode count. I think it's 108, if I'm right. I can't remember because I can't. I'm talking about perky. Yeah, I'm 68. I'm perky. I can't remember a goddamn thing. That's my problem. Okay, so last night, if you tuned in, we couldn't connect the blog with Blog Talk Radio, so we were not on Blog Talk Radio, and therefore our call-in number 563-999-3435 didn't work. We've not connected tonight either. Last night we got nothing. We just couldn't get in. Tonight we're getting a bunch of error messages, but we can't connect. So I've given up on that for the evening anyway. So we don't have a call-in number tonight. So if you want to call in, you got to go to our webpage at jimandknight.com/call and click the big blue button at the top of the screen. That'll get you in. It's simpler than making a FaceTime call. Seriously, you can do this. No problem. Also, you can text us, and we got a text last night. I appreciate that. At 408-458-5088. You can text us real time. I got a screen off here to the side. I can see the texts as they come in. So our thanks to Don Zorro for showing up last night. That was pretty cool. We had a nice chat with him. Tonight, the dynamic duo of At Night, Jennifer Oliver O'Connell from Red State, and As the Girl Turns, and Jeff Meyer of Conk News at conk.com, at conk.com. They come on. They tag team. We talk about the news. We talk about stuff. Jeff will talk about his feelings, I'm sure. Yeah, whatever. Oh, man. I kind of enjoy making fun of him. He enjoys making fun of me too, so it's like it's fine. Okay, so and then what's coming up this coming week? So that's tonight. Tomorrow, Thursday, Leigh Richardson. She's the founder of the Brain the Brain Performance Center in Dallas. And do you think my brain's performing right now? No, it's not. And she's going to talk about her theory is she's the founder of this organization. She's a psychiatrist. Her theory is that the primary reason that Americans are so damn depressed is because their diet is shit. And you know your diet's shit. You know that. You're going to Wendy's and Culver's and McDonald's and you're eating that crap and it's crap, and no one cooks anymore. No one, I find it amazing the popularity of cooking shows on cable TV, even though nobody actually cooks. People love watching people cook, but no, nobody does it. I do it. I'm really good at it too. You'd marry me if you could taste some of my food. Yeah. So also the other thing is I've been reading up on this, and this is kind of interesting too. The other thing that's going on in America is there's basically, and I hate to say this because the government is trying to address this. Like the government can't address shit, let alone your feelings. But there's an epidemic of loneliness in the United States. Like 1 out of every 3 people say they're lonely on a regular basis. And she thinks that one of the things that's going on here is people get lonely. And when people get lonely, they have a tendency to binge eat. And they're eating shitty food anyway. And actually makes the problem worse. So I'm looking forward to talking to her. And I mentioned this last night. This is the 108th show we've done here since July 31st of last year. My wife hasn't seen 5 minutes of this. She is not interested. We put up a 10-minute highlight reel. I said, just check this out, honey. It's 10 minutes. Nope, she won't watch that either. But because of the content or the what's the not the oh god what I'm because of the concept, the subject matter tomorrow night, she said she might actually watch. She's kind of interested in this whole food thing, so that'll be interesting. Okay, so Friday we don't do shows here. Monday night we're taking off. That's Monday. What is that? The 22nd. And the reason is, and I'm happy to tell you this, we're getting new internet put into our studio, fiber optic cable, and so I want to make absolutely sure it's working. Now they're supposed to be done well before showtime, but who knows? I mean, it's like it's the internet. It's all fucking magic. I mean, we know who know I have a little television studio here in this my little office, and how the hell does this work? Does anybody know? Not to mention the fact is, I mean, we just upgraded our equipment. We're still not breaking the bank here. I've got a camera pointed at me right now that you're watching this from that's cost well under $500. That's way better than $100,000 television camera from 20 years ago. It's not even close. Those were $100,000. I paid well under 500. And the amazing thing, I'm already thinking about upgrading. It's amazing. But this one works pretty damn well. I'm pretty happy. So not only that, we got a new light here too. And this one's computer controlled, and that's helped immensely. So the color in my face, my cheeky little face, is kind of a little better. It almost looks like I'm alive. You know, I think if Joe Biden stood in this chair, he would look almost alive. That's what I think. So because we're putting in new internet, and it's going to be really great, because the really cool thing about it's not just that we're going to up our speed by 2 times. It's the upload speed. Those of you who pay attention to this, all those numbers you always hear, they're download speeds. Because if you're sitting home watching Netflix, that's all you care about. It takes very, very little bandwidth to send your mouse click or your Roku click or whatever it is you're doing. Very little. But we are actually uploading video to the satellite, and our upload speed's going like 10 times. So and the thing is, we haven't actually had any real problems here, but it should really alleviate any problem we would possibly have ever. So that's why I'm looking forward to this a lot. That's on Monday. So in other words, we're taking Monday off. Tuesday, Ed Morrissey, managing editor of hotair.com, he's joined us. Got a lot to talk about. Now, Jennifer also works for Red State, which is these are all Salem media properties, and we just kind of fell in with these people. They pay a lot of attention to us and vice versa. It's kind of very nice. It is. And he's a very, very well-learned man, and I like his writing a lot. And not only that, he really seems to understand and have a handle on international relations. And David Strom said this, and David Strom is the associate editor of Hot Air. He works for Ed. But he said this last time he was on the show. The amazing thing about Donald Trump, and this is really true, if you stop and think about it, I mean, so Strom's position on Trump is he personally doesn't like Trump, but he thought he was an excellent president. And he said the best thing about Trump's tenure was his foreign policy. And if you think about it, that should be the last thing that Trump should be good at. I mean, he's never, he got into politics basically as a newbie, but a lot of the domestic issues in politics are pretty much, if you're astute, you can pretty much, figure that stuff out pretty well. But foreign policies are a completely different world, and he's right. One of the best things about Trump's tenure as president was his foreign policy. The world ran fine. As contrast that to now. Now I have said previously that I like to give Joe Biden credit where credit is due, and that's hard. But the only thing that I think Biden's done positive so far, is he has not screwed up the war in Ukraine. Now he's in the process of screwing up the war in Israel. That it appears he's going to screw that up. That hasn't happened yet, but he's in the process of doing it. But Trump's right. If Trump was president, none of this shit would have even happened. So Yeah, anyway, so but Ed's really he talks really well about that stuff. I've been on the fence on the war of Ukraine. I haven't know what to think. The last time he was on, he made a very um, eloquent case at the end for the fact that we should give Ukraine funding. One of the reasons we promised we would. They did not, they did not get into nuclear weapons on the promise that we would defend them. So I suppose in that sense we owe them, and Ed's right about that. Okay, that's Tuesday, the 23rd. That's this coming Tuesday. A week from tonight, on the 24th, Bruce Solheim is going to be joining us. He's the author of I think 9 books, but his latest book is called We Are the Aliens, and the basis of this book is that uh, the aliens seeded us, and that they have screwed with our DNA and our genetic development, and therefore we're basically hybrids of them. That's what he says. Now he's in a very interesting position. He's a college professor. He's a member of the military, reserve, but I think still active, if I'm right. I think I got that correct. And also, he's been a defense contractor. And the implication is, I'm really interested in asking him about this. The implication is that some of the stuff he talks about when it comes to the ETs and UFOs, he's gathered from working in the military. And I don't know, like a lot of people work in the military, I don't know what kind of security oath he's under. We have to ask him that, because I mean, you like Louis Elizondo, this guy who's been in the news for the last like 7, 8 years. He has a security oath that he has to be very, very careful what he says. He can't, like, he can say, I believe that we have people coming here from other planets, but he can't say I approve of it. Even if he does, even if he knows that, he can't say that. So, and Louis has been very open about the fact that that's the case, and I'm curious to ask Bruce about where he stands on that too. But that should be a really interesting discussion. So he's on Wednesday. Now, yeah, if you are a UFO nut, you're just going to go bonkers on this. He's on Wednesday, Thursday, the 25th, a week from tomorrow. Kathleen Marden is coming on, and she is the niece of Betty Hill, of Betty and Barney Hill fame, the first basically documented alien abduction in America in 1961. And also one of the most documented, one of the ones with the most circumstantial evidence. And I would say, and we'll talk about that there with her, that there's basically smoking gun proof that this happened. Now, the weird thing about, and she talks about this in I've been reading her book, Forbidden Knowledge, which is her latest book. And it's actually a revision of a book she wrote only a couple of years ago, but she revised it and came out. There too much stuff has happened. And she says this in the book, and that is about the fact there's been Gallup polls that have been done, and some of them have been commissioned by organizations she's worked for. She's fairly well respected as a UFO researcher, quite well respected. She basically, after she was 16 when her aunt got abducted, and she basically decided to address her entire life, her career to this, and so she's quite respected. Now, her latest book, which she wrote basically kind of under, I don't know, the lack of a better term, professional duress, because she did not want to write this. She said she knows that some of the stuff was so far out that she said that even the people in the UFO community couldn't accept it. And what she's talking about, the fact that she says she has been in regular contact with extraterrestrials. That's what she says. Since basically roughly around the time of her aunt's abduction. And she talks about this in a book, but we're going to ask her about this because it's not really that clear. Apparently, shortly after that, Betty Hill was clandestinely recruited into a military experiment to talk to the aliens. And she said when that happened, and apparently physically, her aunt lived only 250 yards away from her, and I think it was in Virginia. I think she's from. I mean, their houses were right next to each other, and she said that when that started happening, UFOs literally started landing on their lawn. That's what she says, and she says she's basically been in touch with ETs ever since. And she said it's because she thinks her aunt, and by extension, the military running this experiment literally opened a door to this. So she said The military set up apparently several other people who said they've been abducted, and the military refuted them, or excuse me, recruited them to take part in this experiment to attempt to contact the ETs, and apparently they succeeded. That's what So, and yeah, I know, and it's true. This is really, really far out stuff. I mean, it really is. She's only talked about this in the last couple of years because she said she didn't think, even in the UFO community, it's so wild. She didn't think anybody would ever believe it. And she has a point there. I mean, I've read the book. Some of it is unbelievable. But I'm going to talk to her about it. We'll ask her about it, and you tune in, and we'll have a fascinating discussion with her. I'm sure we will. So I did tell you, Blog Talk Radio is offline. You can't call in with a telephone number. You can call in with your webcam. Go to jimandnight.com/call. You can send us a text in real time at 408-458-5088. And unfortunately, I will end up taking the bottom bar off of the screen because it gets in the way of our participants here. Jeff Myers, a very handsome, very attractive man. I want you to see his face. So, yeah. Any rate, and also, so Jeff is the publisher and CEO of Kong News, and they are our sponsor. And so, let me show you this. This is the front page of Kong News in real time as of about half an hour ago. Now, this changes every 3 hours. The Conch News servers go out onto the internet and they collect stories from 75 different news sources, and then they bring those stories back. They put them in chronological order, regardless of the source. They lay them out on their front page. And the really interesting thing here is you can't see my cursor, but excuse me. The top left story here on this particular actual live page is the fact it's from Hot Air, and it's about the fact that they're not going to let the valedictorian at USC give her commencement speeches here because it turns out this woman is a pro-Palestinian wacko. So, and our friend Jazz Shaw wrote this article. He comes down here regularly, and I'm not going to we've set a tentative date for this, but I don't really want to announce it. We're going to do a UFO panel show in a couple weeks, and Jazz is helping me put this together. And I have to say, we have the people who are so far going to be on it are quite well. Once again, we're batting above our pay grade. Are quite well known. But anyway, he wrote this story. And he said in the story, you should check this out. You go to Kong News at conk.com, CONK.com, and maybe you can do this and watch or listen to the show at the same time. I don't know why you couldn't, depending on but he says he's conflicted about this personally, and he's right, because on the one hand, freedom of speech and all that stuff, and it is speech. We are talking. She's literally talking about. We're talking about her giving a speech, and on the other hand, she's batshit crazy. So I mean, I don't know. I suppose it depends on where you fall on that spectrum of what you should do. Now, what was I going to say? I know what I was going to say. I was going to reference we're waiting for Jennifer to join us here. Jeff is in the queue. Jennifer wrote an article. I'll just reference this maybe about the fact that it's about the fact that people are talking about harmful speech. What's harmful? What is harmful? That's the other thing. Do words hurt? No. I mean, maybe because I'm old school. If words hurt, the guys who fought at Normandy should have been slaughtered. It's like, because it's like that was way worse than that. But anyway, we're waiting for Jennifer, but we're not going to wait anymore. Anyway, so this is Conch News right here. So all of the photos are from the articles. The headlines are the original articles from the articles. They're not rewritten. And you click on any of this, you go directly to those articles. This is the best single newspaper on the internet, and I'm not kidding. You should check this out. If you're a news junkie, you'll be in heaven. And on top of that, you can spend 2 hours plowing through this front page. Conch is essentially a one-page website. Not really. They do some other stuff going on here. But the big deal is the front. Oh, and by the way, I should point out this is free, totally free. You don't even have to register to see this. You just go there, and if you come back 5 hours later, most of the news has changed, and the stuff that hasn't changed is at the bottom of the page. It's pushed down, so you can't go wrong with this. I check this constantly, and you should too. That's at conk.com, conk.com. All right, and with that, I'm going to play 12 seconds of bumper music. It's very entertaining, and then we're going to put Jeff on here. Watch this. Hey, hi. Boink.
I'm awake.
You're alert too, huh? All right, now unfortunately, I got to get rid of this thing here because it's there you go. Unfortunately, but people seem to know the number. We get texts even when it isn't up there. So
perfect.
Good, yeah.
I'd like to just address that part of the conk. Thank you for talking about conk.com. And yeah, the article there from Hot Air, it is, I think we have to get to a point about free speech. As Americans, this isn't a first world problem, free speech. It's what the world needs to not have as a problem. We don't have a problem with this because it's written into our Constitution.
Yeah, but that said, Jeff, and I don't have to tell you this, we're the only country that has it on the earth that has it written into the Constitution.
That's what I'm saying. We cannot, right. This woman or young lady that wants to give her commencement address, there's no reason she shouldn't be able to deliver it. We have to quit being thin-skinned.
Yeah.
Because in the end, it just shows, it gives a place for the rhinos, the weakling Republicans to hide, because they don't have to confront the idiocy. Now, you can have a debate with this gal. Have you heard of this show on FX called Shogun? It's a remake of this 1975.
I've heard of it. I haven't seen it. Yeah.
Great production.
Yeah, I've heard that. Yeah.
There's an American translator or a Japanese woman that learns to speak Portuguese or English. And so she's an interpreter, and she's a Christian. She's become a believer. And so this Anjin, the pilot from the English ship, he's called an Anjin. It means pilot, Japanese, is a Protestant, and he's just loves to rip the Catholics throughout the show, right? In one of the early episodes, he's just dogging the Catholic religion. And so this leader that she's translating for says, this Anjin doesn't speak well of your religion. And her response is, my faith would not be sincere if it could not be tested. And I think that's what we have to take as Americans in this free speech. If this woman acknowledging her position makes you cower or be tested, your faith being tested, you're not sincerely a First Amendment believer.
Yeah.
Because again, if she's saying we need to get in the streets and start war and fighting, she's just going to talk about what she thinks is happening to the people in Hamas, is what I believe she's going to say. I'm not sure, but let her speak it, and we can move on from there. Don't be afraid to have your faith tested, or you're going to be in this quagmire we've come into after 250 years of existence, where the bullies of the neighborhood who say bullying isn't right, the Democrats and the Democrat press, will always have the upper hand.
Yeah, and there's another thing too, Jeff, and that is just on a pragmatic level. Don't you want to know who's nuts?
And if they think I'm nuts for my positions, that is fine.
Right. I know.
There's nothing wrong with that.
We're talking on the tube, right? I know. It's like, yeah, are we nuts? You know, I don't know if you heard any of my intro, but I have Kathleen Martin coming on next week, and she says she's talking to aliens, and that sounds fucking nuts, But let's hear her out, whatever,
right.
It's same with this woman,
but she'll be that woman will be more believable than anyone from NASA saying we landed on the moon.
Right.
When you ask that question,
right. Absolutely.
Right. When you ask that question, they look at you like you can't say those words. Like what? I can't question you.
Yeah. Well, there's another thing too, and that is, and this whole thing about speech being quote unquote harmful. This really bugs the crap out of me. This has been introduced into the lexicon by the left. I don't know anybody who's ever been killed by hearing words talking.
Right.
It's like everything's relative. How harmful is it?
And they're killed because of the stifling of words, because then it turns into I've got to take action because I can't get my words out.
Yeah.
I mean, look at a kid. If a kid can't explain something, they usually lash out with a hit, a bite, a kick. That's just humans' progression of if I can't explain myself and I get frustrated, I'm going to get physical.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's the other thing too. I'm going to bring this up too. And that is, and the Donald Trump presidency was in some ways largely about this. Bullying isn't necessarily always a bad thing. It is for children because it's pointless, but in real life, you need, I get back to Tina Fey, who's a fantastic liberal, but she wrote this in her book. It's a big taker quote. And she says, sometimes it takes a bitch to get things done. And that's true. Sometimes it does. Sometimes you need an asshole to get things done, And
that's why Trump's foreign policy was successful, because I made some notes as you're talking about that. One, as leading, when the foreign leaders get together, they're there to make progress, which means that things have to move forward.
Yeah.
There has to be a progression forward. And with progressions forward, things start to have completion. Now, in domestic policy, that's different. You can sit there and talk about and fake the forward progression, which we've seen here in this country now.
Yeah,
right?
a million
we need
times.
More taxes, more money for education, just all that nonsense. But when the world leaders come together, they have to go back understanding the forward progression that their adversaries or allies are going to be making, so they don't leave their people behind. And that's why Trump was, I'll use the word respected. It doesn't matter, feared, whatever word that scares you into being a ninny. He made the other leaders have to move forward, right?
Yeah.
He went and met Kim Jong-un or whatever his name is on his side of the line. Is that a big deal? In negotiations and in understanding your competitor or your adversary, yeah, that's a really big deal. One, it shows you're not afraid. And two, they have to kind of go, ooh, this guy isn't afraid.
Yeah.
And so,
okay, I have to ask you, all that stuff to me seems master of the obvious stuff. How come half the country doesn't get that? What is it with the liberal personality that they don't understand? That seems so plainly obvious to me and you.
Well, they don't like confrontation unless they're going to win. Remember,
well put.
The liberal disease is, I can't be wrong, and I will never say I'm sorry.
Right, that's correct.
And with that as the backdrop of how you measure everything, they're pinned into that. That's not a way they operate.
Right. Well, that's exactly what's going on right now. They are torn between their ideology and the fact that right now, what they're proposing doesn't work at all. And actually it never would.
It never would have worked.
Right.
The problem is they never pulled back on the reins. They thought they could keep the horse charging.
Yeah.
The horse is going to fall over dead because they never stopped to water
Literally.
it or feed it or let her take a shit. Yeah. Their horse is going to fall dead. And my motto with you this last 4 or 5 months has been vote Democrat, let them finish the job.
Yeah.
And I can't,
Yeah.
I can't, I'm really not joking about that.
I know
I
you're not.
hope Donald Trump sometime in July or August, as these trials start to just wear his ass down, which it's going to. It's going to catch him because of his age. Plus, at some point, he's got to wake up whenever he sleeps and say, why? Wouldn't I do better if I just said, hey, I guess you guys have it.
Right.
I'm not going to run. And let this whole thing implode on. Let the rhinos get sucked up with the Democrats. As citizens, yeah, it's going to be painful, but it's going to be painful either way. The faster this plane hits the ground and you walk away with the damage you're going to have, the sooner you can start to get better. This more dragged out.
But you don't think there's a lot of people, I think the counter opinion is that maybe we don't have to let the plane hit the ground. If we can grab this controls right now, maybe we can actually get this back up in the air. You don't think that's possible?
Not unless you're going to wipe out 60% of the bureaucrats. You're done. They're going to grab the stick back from you once you get it pulled back.
Okay, another question though. Do you think it's, and I've actually thought a lot about this and I don't know what to think. So I'm truly asking here, not a little question. Do you think it's possible to get rid of 60% of the bureaucrats? I mean, the president is the executive. I mean, he can't set the budget, but he also doesn't have to spend the money they give him either,
Right.
I mean, for example, I don't think the president can actually close the Department of Education, but I think he could fire 90% of the people working there. I don't see why he couldn't,
Right. Just like Reagan did with the air traffic controllers.
Yeah, right. Which was
all he has to say is, one of the articles on Kong today was about how much of the government email gets just destroyed, and it's totally illegal. There's a watchdog group going after this because they don't want to be accountable 10 years from now, right? So they're just wiping out all this email and stuff. And again, that's the problem. How do there aren't enough Republicans or true Americans in our legislative branch that have the spine to say that's the only way we can fix this. So, they'd be basically new signers to the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah.
There'd be a new group of signers that would lose all their shit and go through a very painful phase. But we are broke.
Totally.
We are broke, and the citizens have no control of fixing that. It's all in the government. It's all in the bureaucrats. I mean, in the bureaucrats, think of Minneapolis. Now, folks around the country, I'm sure you've heard the story. The city council in Minneapolis said that the Uber and Lyft drivers needed to get paid better. So these two corporations said, fine, we'll just quit operating in your city. They said, no, you won't. We have some alternatives. Well, I think that the alternatives started to show up, and it was like a rickshaw and a fucking horse-drawn carriage.
Right. It was mom and
they were cars. Yeah. So you took this really well-oiled machine and you're going to exchange it with a rickshaw and a horse-drawn carriage.
Right.
It's just not going to work.
No.
And so what the bureaucrats did was they said, well, we're going to delay this till July because we need time to figure it out. Well, if Uber and Lyft are smart, they will just on May 1st, which is in 2 weeks, they will cease to operate. Because again, that's the best way to show their customers that the rickshaw and the horse-drawn carriage aren't alternatives.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they can bring their pitchforks back to the city council chambers and say, you guys are done. In fact, you can't meet again till your terms are up and we get to vote in some new people. That's how this stuff has to change.
Yeah.
And so Jennifer had a interview with a guy early in April. oh, I got to find my note. His name was Billy Ray Todd. He didn't win. He was running for the Republican seat in the 108th voting district in Alabama.
Uh-huh.
I mean, the interesting thing, if you can go to asthegirlturns.com on Substack, she's got this interview with this Billy Ray Todd, a veteran. He's running against these other people. Just a super interesting interview. And he says a few things that I thought were just, and I don't know if Jennifer is going to join us tonight. I'm going to cover this now.
Yeah, please do.
He said, schools, this is why they're failing. They teach everything but the right things. And they're the last defense of freedom. Think about that. Our schools now, they teach everything but the right things. And they are the last line of freedom. I mean, that should be like pounded onto the front of all the courtrooms and schools. I mean, that should be our new motto in America by Billy Ray Todd. He also said one of the things that's going on in legislatures all over the country and even down into the city, right? It's their local issues. Local issues, if you stop it there, they can't happen at state and national. And he says and he said, addressing real and local issues that we all face is important. And the issue with what's going on as the candidates are, the public is voting for people that were either commissioners that are trying to become legislators or school administrators that are trying to become legislators. And he basically sums it up with, these people don't understand how the economy runs.
No shit.
Right?
Yeah.
They start off with a budget that's guaranteed. The money's going to come in.
Right.
But the system's set up that the sales have to happen before the money can arrive. And I thought that's just his perspective is he's got his feet, no shoes on. He's standing on the earth, grounding to the earth, and he's looking out saying, what's the problem? And he's going, you can't have a county commissioner turn into a legislator, and you can't have a school board administrator become a legislator because they don't understand how the system works because the money's already guaranteed from the places they come, right?
Yeah.
The county commissioner, they say we have a budget of $200 million. They just spread it out to the right buckets. Same thing with the school administrators. Right. But that's like he says, it's happening in Alabama. These people don't have, they're Republicans, but they're for all the goofy shit. No more goofy than what's going on in California or Minneapolis. Right. Now, this is in a deep red state. And I just thought if you can catch that interview that she has with him, he's 25, 30 minutes. He's just a well-spoken veteran. He did not win. The legislator and the school board, or the commissioner and the school board, two people had a runoff. Hey, you put your hand on the stove, you're going to get burnt. If you keep putting it on there and say, this sucks, well, you got to change where you put your hand.
So, last night I had Don Zoro on here,
Yes. How is a good-looking Don Zoro?
He's fantastic, as always. Very, very handsome. You know him.
Yes.
So I was telling him about my friend. I have a friend who's like the single most liberal person I know. And even he was bitching about the fact that the Minneapolis City Council spent all this time crafting the ceasefire resolution for Gaza. And then, I'm watching Gutfeld a couple nights ago, and Jim Florentine's on, fantastic comedian. He said, you know, when the history is written 50 or 100 years from now, they talk about the Israeli wars. Everyone's going to say, yeah, you know what really tipped it was that resolution by the Bakersfield City Council. Yeah, it's such bullshit. And the thing is, they're wasting truly valuable time doing this stuff, you know. And so let me segue to this. This woman at the Bakersfield City Council, she gets up. I mean, I don't know if you saw this, you know, and Kat Timpf had a fantastic turn on this. She gets up and she's pro-Palestine, and she's, you know, talking about Americans were colonizers, all this sort of shit. And Timpf was saying, well, okay, fine. And then at the end, she says, we're going to send somebody to you. And she's talking to the council. She's actually at a Diaz. She says, we're going to send somebody to your house and kill all of you. And nope, can't say that. She got arrested. She got arrested.
Again.
19 counts of terroristic threats, and they pulled her into court, and she's crying. It's like, you stupid bitch. I mean, God almighty, what were you expecting? It's like,
she rode her horse to its death.
That's right. Yes, that's what she did.
She rode her horse to its death.
And you're right. We're wasting really valuable time on these things that don't actually matter. They can't accomplish anything, you know? I don't think Hamas cares what the Bakersfield City Council thinks, you know?
Right. And that's the thing. Our first world problems have us really confused.
Yeah.
With what the third world's doing.
That's a good way to put it, too. It
and
really
so
is.
Because we're first worlders, we get to opine on all sorts of shit. And in the end, they're going to do what they're going to do, and we're stuck going backwards.
Yeah. All right, let's change subjects here, because there's something you brought up before we actually went on the air here. This thing about the Baltimore diocese actually closing all these churches. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. So on Conk the other day, there was an article. Hold on, I just got to find it here. You know how you have all sorts of windows open? Okay, it was a National Review article by someone named Doherty, last name Doherty. And here it is. This is the first paragraph. The Baltimore Sun reports on the Archdiocese of Baltimore plans for restructuring the Catholic Church or Archdiocese restructuring. That catches your eye. They are dramatic. 61 current parishes would be reduced down to 21 across the city and suburbs. Baltimore used to be the home of more than 250,000 Catholics at their height. Reported Sunday Mass attendance across the diocese is down to just 2,000 parishioners.
Unbelievable. 250,000 down to 2,000.
Yeah. And so I think we're being set up for a big religious revival. And I'm not picking a particular religion. I'm just saying people are going to have to turn away from this nonsense, whether it's government nonsense or, the Catholic archdiocese around the country never wanted to address that they were the harbingers of the pedophiles.
No, they haven't.
Right. Baltimore was the big area out east. Unfortunately, here in Minnesota, St. John's, it's not an abbey, but there's a college in central Minnesota.
Yeah.
That hid a lot of these men that would get chased out of Catholic churches all over the country, and they'd hide these guys. They never prosecuted them. And they just lied to their parishioners, right? And then they shamed them into having to donate to help pay for it. To me, this 250,000 Catholics are worshiping somewhere. Catholics are taught that you need to at least attend church once a week. So I don't know what portion just said, screw it, I'm not going. That's X percent. But my guess is the majority have now spread out to non-denominational churches or went to a Protestant or whatever. Who cares? I mean, some of them might have said, I'm going to be a Muslim. Great.
Yeah.
I mean, in the end, believing there's a higher power is better off for everyone because it takes the power away from people like Mike Johnson, Nancy Pelosi,
Well, that is
Joe Biden.
that is the alternative, Jeff. I mean, right now you have a whole Marxist culture that's trying to encourage basically worship of the government, or I mean, it's atheism technically, but I mean they are trying to replace the church or religion or God or whatever you want to call it
Right.
with the government. They are.
Yep.
You know, and it's
come to the government and we will solve your problems.
Right.
That's now we'll solve them what we think is the best for the government to succeed, and we'll just drag your carcass along till your carcass dies, and then we'll get the next person to fill that slot. And so something's going to give, and with those types of numbers moving around in a big religion like that, something's on the horizon, and I think it's good. I think it's, again, this line from Shogun: "My faith would not be sincere if it could not be tested."
Oh, I got to ask you about that though. So you were saying that in the storyline, you're talking about two people of different denominations. They're both Christians, but one's Catholic and one isn't. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. So
right.
the Portuguese got to Japan and China first and started to convert to these people to Catholicism, right? Then the rest of Europe heard what the Portuguese were doing, but the Portuguese had kept it a secret. It was just rumored in England that they had found this Japanese, is what they call it.
And does this take place in like the 1800s?
1600s.
1600s. Okay.
And so the story of this is they went around the other way through the Magellan Pass down on the southern tip of Africa and ended up there. But again, that that battle of Catholic versus Protestant, and again, our governments have just followed what religions have done. Make these idols, right?
Right.
Pay your tithe, pay your taxes. That's what we all did Monday. We got to be on time for it. They can drag their feet to get these appropriation bills done, and then when they do it, they just throw some shit on the wall.
I actually had to ask my accountant whether Monday was tax day, because the last few years they've totally screwed it up so badly with, I didn't even actually know for sure, but it was,
It was. Yep. Yeah. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that, I talk a lot about being a believer, and I'm excited to be alive at this time because something magical is going to happen.
Yeah. No, it does seem that way. So, Jeffrey, let me ask you, I mean, I'm starting to think about this a lot. People, I'm not the only person who said this, and maybe you said this too, that I expect that before the election, there's going to be some sort of black swan event. Something's going to happen that's going to be completely out of left field, and it might throw the election or might not. But I'm starting to feel more and more that that's going to happen. Are you starting to feel this too, or?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in the business world, I'm watching some businesses do some things like dropping whole product lines and doing things like, hold on, you did that for 50 years and now you're saying there's no value in it anymore.
Yeah, I've noticed. I mean,
just those paradigm shifts. It's like, why wouldn't you slowly get out of it? I was watching a company today. They didn't open up for this season. They were an earth moving company. They had an auction for their equipment, and they had the company name, and it said retire. It was a retirement. And it's like, hold on, you just shut it down. All that name recognition and blue sky and value and past work. You just said, we're not going to take any value for that. We're going to just take the auctioneer, pardon me, the auctioneer's total less their 30% cut and say that's good enough.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never heard of a company doing that. I've heard, we know of companies, I've had to force a company into the ground because I got into a bad deal. That's business.
Right.
This was, I'm not going to take my ball home. I'm going to poke a hole in it and just leave it on the field.
Yeah, right.
Well, I mean,
that's
what?
a great analogy. That's right. Now it's funny it's funny you should bring this up because my accountant just today was telling me the same thing, that she has a client that's just thinking about walking away.
Yeah.
And I said, they're not going to sell the company? She said no. She said no, they're just going to give up. Just going to
Right. I mean, and the thing, as a business buyer, right? Everyone wants, it's, you want to buy low, the seller wants to sell high.
Yeah.
But if they're going to just quit, so you take the bottom from someone, at least you get something for your effort. And as a buyer, it's like, they might have sucked, but at least their customers are going to call and bitch. And at least I can turn those people, if I can turn 50% of them into, oh, it's under new ownership and you're going to help me resolve this issue. Now you got an ally and you got something. I mean, to start something from scratch is so much energy.
Yeah, it's hard. And
it is so hard.
It is. And not only that, if you can bust your ass and it will, statistically, you'll probably fail way more. That's the thing. You just bust your ass. And it's really,
even more now than 15 or 20 years ago. When we were doing stuff 15, 20 years ago, the regulations weren't there.
Right.
There wasn't, hey, for every part-time employee that works 30 hours, they get a free hour of whatever the fuck they call it.
That's the other thing. My accountant was talking about that too.
Oh yeah, I mean, these are accounting nightmares.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But just the math alone to figure that crap out is just mind-boggling.
And what do we know about part-time people? They're searchers. They're going to search at your business, and if it doesn't work out, they're going to leave after a short amount of time and search for another job until they find a career or a better fit. So trying to keep that paperwork straight on the it's my last day, and it's like, hold on, Jimmy and Jeff, it's your last day. We got to calculate these 15 shekels we have to give you because you worked, and now there's this stuff, and we don't want to drag it along, and we got to get you paid in 24 hours of your last hour here. I mean, it just adds more of what the government loves, animosity between the employer and the employee.
But as a person who runs a business, doesn't it just piss the hell out of you that Congress and the people making these regulations never think about how hard it is to execute them?
Me, I look at the other side of the coin. I think it's awesome because it keeps real dreamers from jumping in the pool.
I never thought of that. Oh my God, you're absolutely right. That's right.
It's true. Like a licensing that doesn't exist. That licenses are there to restrict access into an industry.
Yeah.
This government regulation is just a natural licensing program that keeps a lot of the probably really good competitors that will knock fat old 58-year-old guys that are closing in on past their prime. I'm not past my prime yet, but it's not more than an arm's length away. And so some 30-year-old that's got a pocket full of money that's getting the boots from 3M or tired of Target and all their corporate shit that could be well financed. They go to an accountant and they're like, hey, I got to set this up. How many people are you going to have? This, that. In St. Paul, Minneapolis, the sales tax is 9.8 7.5%. Well, how does that work? And well, you got to track this and you got to track that. And all of a sudden their head's spinning because they were never exposed to it in corporate America.
Right. That's right.
Right. Whatever. Someone had a corporate card and just paid for that. What do you mean? I got to pay for that in 15 days, or these guys won't even give me credit? I think from my standpoint as an entrepreneur, bring on the regulations and shit. For me, it's a little turn of the screwdriver, an eighth of a turn.
Right.
For a new person, it's like a big elephant shit right on their head every day.
I never thought of that. You're absolutely right. You got to be really, really fucking serious to jump in.
Oh, yeah. Right now.
Yeah.
And again, my model of buy an existing business. Well, instead of looking at the dollars and the income and all that accounting nonsense to make sure that their sales are reflective of what's really going on, you got to dig deeper into their HR. Like, what kind of time bomb is laying within their HR? Were they tracking this labor? Were they doing their sales tax correctly? And some of this stuff doesn't fall on you because it was the previous owners. But guess who the state goes to? Whoever owns that federal ID number or that state sales tax number. And maybe you got a new one, but it's associated with the old one. You're going to get their mail. So, to me, being in business, it's just a natural, like a huge filter with very tiny holes that people slip through. I every time I hear about this shit, I get excited. Like, oh, good. We got to add one little thing because we're already in and we stay current on this stuff as best we can. But the new guy, he is hosed. Yeah.
That's interesting. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Monty Python. Just one tiny little mint. Does that mean anything to you? That's it. Yeah, I know. It's like, right. You just take this one mint. That's all. That's all. Yeah. Sure, you explode. so hey, I'm going to change the subject here for a second. So Trump goes to a bodega in Harlem, and hundreds of people show up, and the crowd goes nuts. And meanwhile, Biden goes to Pennsylvania, 30 people. I've been bitching about this for 3 years, about the fact that nobody, and same with Jill. Jill went to California to do a fundraiser. 30 people showed up. Nobody comes out to see this guy. Nobody. And you're going to tell me he got 81 million votes?
Yeah.
Come on.
That's why Jesus. I say Trump should say to him, it's yours, baby. It's yours. People will freak out. Like, no, we don't want him. I'm going to vote for him, but say I didn't because no one knows who I voted for.
Yeah.
But if I can't vote for someone else, I'm really screwed into a corner.
You do wonder, too. I mean, if you had $5 billion, like, wouldn't you just want to buy a giant yacht and just go and sail the seas? I mean, shit.
But that's Trump's never. I mean, those guys have already had all the toys.
Right. Well, you and I have talked about this before, too, and that is, it's astonishing how people of any money whatsoever don't want to quit working. Because, like, a friend of mine said, here's the deal. You quit working, you die in 2 years. He said, everybody I know who's quit working is retired that dies in 2 years. And that seems to be the case. I mean,
because there's nothing to fight. Why do you get out of bed?
Yeah, that's right.
We regularly went to Maui and Kaanapali Beach, which is really close to Lahaina. Been to Lahaina, I don't know, half dozen times. Had a chance to go this past winter, and I just said, I'm never going back to Hawaii. I don't. What happened in that town?
God. Hold it just a second. I gotta stop you. You love that place. That surprises the crap out of me.
Yep. It's one of those. I've done it, and at some point, if things change, for us and for my family, it's like we really enjoyed it. It was a paradise. You were in America. If you got in trouble, you were in the American legal system. I mean, all of that stuff. But they've done something to that. Now, people that haven't been there will show up and not know the difference.
Uh-huh.
And so those are the things, what do you do?
I've never been there. You got to tell me the difference.
Of going there now?
Yeah.
Just they're, Lahaina was just one of those magical towns, walkable town. And the whole thing's gone. I mean, the people that live there have no place to live. They didn't back before it burned. It was hard to live. They were living, 6 people to a 2-bedroom house because it costs so much.
Yeah.
And for what happened there and the explanation of it just doesn't jive.
Well, no, it doesn't, does it? I mean, I don't know too much about this, but this is what I understand is that basically the government told people go this way, and if you went that way, you died. And so some smart people didn't go that way, and then they lived, but the whole thing still got destroyed. And then you wonder, well, why is the government telling people this stuff? And it's like, I don't know. It's just like,
yeah, I don't. And so again, to me, just looking at life in general, those are sometimes things change and you have to make the decision. I'm not going to do it. I don't have to do that anymore. I'm thankful I had the opportunity to do it, but that's gone.
Well, I gotta ask you though. I mean, you referred to this a few seconds ago. We're both getting up there in age. I gotta admit, I'm at the point where I don't want to leave the house. I don't. I truly.
Yeah, I don't.
It's like I don't understand. I was the guy who was always off doing shit, and it's like now it's like, I come and do the show, and that's about it. And, well, doing the show actually takes me a lot of time, but I'm not interested. I'm becoming a recluse. I admit it. I find that really fascinating, and people know me finding I think fascinating too. But yeah, I just like I'm not interested in going anywhere.
Yeah, and if you want to climb Mount Everest, do it when you're 30, not when you're 70.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, so part of that is planning your life. And part of it is, go to the airport. It's not only the stupid people there that show up with a fucking water bottle strapped to their backpack, even though it says no full water bottles, nothing. Only Americans show up in line and go, what? I got to throw that out. I just paid $6 for it. Yeah, dummy, you do. Now the shit's falling off the airplane when you're in the air.
Yes.
I mean, yes, so it's
So a friend of mine, I got to tell you this, a friend of mine are talking about that flight where the door plug fell off, and I'm saying, well, here's the deal. That's actually the airline's fault because, you took delivery of the airplane, you own it now. And he said, no. He said, no, if Boeing screwed that up, Boeing's still responsible. And then it turns out, and I thought, no, I'm right. It turns out that they never put the bolts in the door plug. Oh. It's like, there's no, it's like, in other words,
this is not buying a car.
No,
this thing is delivered to you. You buy the body and you tell Boeing what engines to put on, right? Boeing doesn't make engines.
Right.
You buy some kind of engine, strap it on there. They fly the thing around, make sure and when you get it, their industry is, we want these things going up and always coming down on the wheels. That's right. That's like the industry standard, pretty simple.
Yeah.
Somehow Boeing got their wires crossed, and now there's people coming out saying, I wouldn't get on one.
I know. That's just today. Like there are people who work at Boeing say they wouldn't put their family on them. It's like terrible.
I was at a conference in Seattle, and the hotel was right next to where they're building these 737s. And I just showed up there, got up to my room, 7th floor, whatever, pull the window shade back and looking down at all these green fuselages with all these ant-human beings moving around, doing 24 hours a day. They were wrenching on these things. They'd come in and out of a building. All of a sudden they'd disappear. They'd fly them off somewhere. And I'm thinking, boy, that's just beautiful American ingenuity going on down there, right? 7 years later. No,
Yeah.
half these guys were playing freaking solitaire or something.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? I
Uh-huh.
mean, plus someone you know is going to get on one that you forgot 3 bolts. It's not like a lug nut on your car and the wheel flies off and maybe it damages another car and you flip. This thing's taking 200 people down,
Yeah.
plus whatever underneath it when it hits the ground.
Right. Although I saw a statistic just now. On average, we're losing one flight every 2 years. But right now, we haven't had a commercial airliner crash in the United States, I think, in the last 8 years. And, which is,
Sure.
I have to admit, even with the rigorous maintenance schedules, I don't see how there's 10 million flights a year. I mean, shit, it's unbelievable. It's so safe. It's mind-boggling. But yeah, and then
but the whole chain started it as safe, right?
Yes.
The pilots got in it knowing this thing's ready to fly.
Right.
I traveled the NASCAR circuit for years, going to the different races, seeing different racetracks. And I always remember showing up there on Thursday when they had their first practice. Now I think they only practice on Friday, but some guy, right, showed up. That's the race car driver. He throws his little suit on so he doesn't get burnt up, a helmet, some gloves, and he jumps in a car, turns the ignition or pushes a button, puts the thing in first gear, pulls out, takes off. I mean, he's going 95 by the time he gets to that first corner. By the time he comes out of the second corner, headed down the back stretch, it's going like 140.
Right.
Into the next corner, they don't get out. You get in your car and you're going to get in the freeway, you're kind of adjusting your mirrors and shit, and you're going to go 70 or 80. In less than 5 seconds or less than 30 seconds, these guys are going 180 miles an hour just hanging. I mean, just like the trust that thing's totally ready to go. Everyone's put every bolt, that's what the airlines, you just got in it and you flew the damn thing.
Yeah, I know. And your point is taken about the fact there's an enormous amount of trust that just exists in everyday life, in American life,
And is that what's being tested right now? Like you used to trust the government to get, protect us from border invaders, have a fair, honest election. Only the people that should vote can vote. They only count shit once. Is that what's going on here? Is all those things we thought that all the bolts were on the Boeing plane, they never really were. And all of a sudden the plug in the voting system blows out the window.
Yeah, maybe, you might have something. I mean, I look back and you're old enough to remember this. I think Watergate was a real watershed in Americans' trust for government. Up to that point, generally people trusted the government, but after that, it was the beginning of the end. And now you look, people don't trust the government at all, and people especially. And to your what you're doing with Call News addresses this. Nobody trusts the media. I mean, it's unbelievable. Right. It's mind-boggling how badly they poll. Not to mention the ratings. I don't even have to talk about that. I mean, CNN's ratings have gone down 30 months in a row. And just when you think they can't go down more, they go down the next month.
Right. And yet they're still around.
Yeah. It's amazing. Right. Of course,
if that was a gas station, they'd be done.
Absolutely. But they get those.
They'd be selling you water for regular 88 octane.
Right. I know. So I don't, but I mean, and then there's this thing with this guy, this Berliner guy who just quit NPR, and I don't know how much you've read about this, but so it turns out the new CEO of NPR is basically, she's like a freaking communist.
Yeah.
Not only that, she has no experience. Until she took this job, she had no experience in journalism or news organizations,
And they're pissed that he posted something on X. And I'm thinking, well, isn't that where all journalists are supposed to post their work?
Really? Isn't it?
I mean, You guys allowed it 10 years
Yeah,
ago. Now you're
right.
bitching about it?
I know.
How stupid.
It's unbelievable, but we've been making fun of NPR for a long time, so
Yeah.
I don't lose any have any sympathy for them going down
No.
the tubes, but
No, they're a buggy whip that should be gone.
yeah, for God's sakes, why are we funding this? I mean, stop it. And here's my rationale, Jeff. I could see 50, 60 years ago why they were funding public broadcasting. Now there's no point to it whatsoever, none. I mean, shit, we're broadcasting right this very second, like I have that sort of budget. No, I don't. No.
They're riding their horse till it falls over dead.
Yes. And that is the theme of our talk tonight. That's right.
As you look at this stuff, no, the horse can't walk forever.
Hey, Jeff, I'm going to bring up something I was going to bring up. Here's an article that Jennifer wrote for Red State about, and it kind of goes along with your thing about the Baltimore diocese. There's an organization now, a formal organization, people trying to talk people into not having kids, for all sorts of reasons. It's bad for the environment. The kids are going to be screwed up. You're not, and this is the one that I find hilarious. You haven't asked anybody to be born. Oh, fuck you. It's like, Jesus Christ. But, seriously, to me, this is also Marxist shit. Now, I'm going to say something totally wacky here. And this is actually the reason I put this on the timeline. So I got this Kathleen Martin woman coming next week. She says she's talked to extraterrestrials, right? And she says she asked this. She says she asked them. She said there's a thing going on in our culture right now that people should have less children. What do you think about that? And she said the ETs told her that's absolutely wrong. You guys have to have more and more kids. She said no good things come from not having enough children, because their big thing is, I don't quite understand the science or whatever, but apparently they say the soul is very real and they've quantified it. So they said we need more souls in the universe. You need to have more kids. And although now that's maybe a crazy voice, that still makes a lot of sense. That's the reason I brought this up. What the fuck are people talking about not having children? That's bullshit.
Right. We have an example called China, where they started, every little girl that was born, they just took it like a cat and just threw it on the ground.
That's right. Yeah.
We got enough girls. Just kick out only with outdoor plumbing survive. Well, that pendulum went, and now it went the other way. And so there's already Japan, same way. They have zero growth.
Right.
We are really close to zero growth.
Yes, we are.
As Caucasians.
Right.
And so in the 4-book series called Conversations with God, he talks about extraterrestrials or life out beyond.
And who is this?
There's a 4-book series called Conversations with God.
And who wrote that? Neil,
I'll find it here. Anyway, he asks about the whole ET, extraterrestrial life, other places. And Neil Donald Walsh is the author. And he talks about the whole, you're living in a realm, and you're right. His thing is, and God explains that your soul or your energy in this life form is wrapped in this body.
Right.
But that energy form never goes away. You move to another realm now, whether that's heaven or reincarnation,
right?
However that is. But the universe is full of this energy, and the universe is endless, right? And the connection of God and everything in the universe is through us, through people or ETs, humans here, whatever the next realm is. And so, I think there's enough of this stuff. There's enough of these pieces out there that you got to stop and say, there's way more to this than what they're letting on. And if there's something that every world religion was good at, is reckon all the old shit that was written down and recorded, right? I mean, from burying the Dead Sea Scrolls to us finding them, to all the stuff from the Aztecs and all those past civilizations that the smarter religion showed up and said, we don't want that out there, so just smash the tablet,
But don't you
burn
think
the records.
in this case, don't you think this is a lot of the government basically trying to once again trying to become a religion, in the sense that for the vast majority of people, the great joy in their lives is having children or a family, And so why are you trying to take that joy away from people? And I don't buy any, people say, oh, the climate change, we're running out of space. Well, that's bullshit. I don't know if you know this. I mean, there's 330 million people in the United States. We've only occupied 4% of the American landmass. I mean, we are not out of space.
No.
It's not going to happen for a million fucking years. There's
Right.
no reason. All these reasons are bogus. So why are they pushing this shit? It's bullshit.
Well, it's control. And remember, originally the religions had this control, and they usurped it to these governments. And so that those two are battling against each other, for who's got the power. Is it the religion or the government?
Yeah.
At the very top. And then from down underneath that is all the schlubs trying to get through a 4-day, 5-day, 6-day work week and 80 years of dragging the carcass around till our horse dies.
It's the Dead Horses edition of Jim Peters and that. Oh man. Well, it's too bad that Jennifer couldn't show up, but we had a nice talk. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's good to see you.
Always a pleasure. You know that. Always a pleasure. Yeah. So you will be back in a couple weeks, I think, if I'm right.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
It'll be May.
Yeah. Well, I know, another tick on the calendar, and then I die. My horse.
And if the Timberwolves are still in the playoffs, the next time I see you, I think everyone should just get ready for the earth to quake.
We'll buy each other beers. We should do that. And also, this is another kind of a side thing, but apparently Glenn Taylor's sale to Rodriguez for the franchise is kind of, I don't know if it fell through so much as he pulled it because he realized he was losing money, but that's an interesting thing too. Do you have an opinion on that?
Well, and Glenn doesn't lose money on deals.
No, he doesn't.
And
it
sounded like,
yeah,
it sounded like there was some clause in there that Rodriguez and his partner, I think his partner's from California, right? I think is where that guy's money's from. And obviously Rodriguez earned his playing ball. And so maybe they weren't detail people, or maybe Glenn pulled a Taylor on him. I have a quick story. I was in an entrepreneurs group a long time ago. It was young entrepreneurs. And we did a deal at a Timberwolves game, and we all, 50 of us got to be in the room with Glenn Taylor. And like all young entrepreneurs, everyone's full of shit. They might have had some early success, but they're really fucking dumb. They're still growing peach fuzz. Yeah. And so Glenn's standing up there and he's talking about the Timberwolves and blah, blah, blah. And some dipshit in our group asks him a question. He goes, well, Mr. Taylor, how does someone get, in touch or figure out if you'd be interested in, one of our businesses? And he goes, well, if you got good sales and you're a shitty business, you've run a shitty business, I probably already know who you are. I always buy on the bottom. I mean, he just said it with this straight face.
Yeah.
Like,
and he's serious.
If you're doing fine and you're running a good ship, I'll never know you. If you got a big ship running it shitty, my people have probably already looked at you.
That's pretty funny. That's amazing.
Just hilarious. Just everyone looked at him like, you don't know who this guy is?
Oh man.
He shops at garage sales for businesses and turns them into diamonds.
Yeah, yeah. I know. Yeah. Well, you got that talent too, so
So yeah, Mr. Taylor was it was quite funny. So when I heard the Rodriguez thing, it harkened back to my 20s when yeah, he's one of those dudes you better make sure he's right on your side.
Yeah.
Or he's gonna slip away on you.
Yeah. And I guess it slipped away from them. From what I understand, they actually did miss a payment. But you'd think there'd be a little grace period, wouldn't you? I mean,
not with Glenn.
No, not with
I'm
Glenn.
sure
no,
that
no.
1201 it was.
Right.
Did that check show up? Nope.
That's right.
It's over.
It's over. Hey, Jeffrey, you take care of yourself, all right? I'm sorry, Jennifer couldn't join us, but yeah. Whatever. We'll talk to her.
We'll catch her again.
Yeah. Yeah, you take care of yourself. I will talk to you soon.
Right.
Okay? All right.
Great.
See you.
Have a good evening.
You too.
Bye, everyone.
That was Jeffrey Meyer. He's one half of the dynamic duo, and I think tonight that would be the dynamic uno. I don't know where Jennifer Oliver O'Connell did not show up. We were expecting her. We talked, so I don't know what she had an emergency or whatever happened, And I think Jeff's right. We're going to call this the Dead Horses edition of Jim Peters at Night, based on what he's talking about. All right, so a few things here before we close up for the evening. This is our part 3. I know I should. I've said this. I know I should call it the C block. I don't care. I've always typed part 3 on the rundowns, so that's what it is now. It's part 3. So first of all, yesterday, I don't know how we missed this because this is right up our alley. Yesterday was National Horny Day in the United Kingdom. I don't know how we missed that, but we did. I didn't know that until today. So yeah, we missed it. That National Horny Day. Today. In 1970, April 17th, the Apollo 13 astronauts and their crippled spacecraft actually returned to Earth. And, if you've seen the movie, that movie is pretty historically accurate, by the way. That's pretty much the way that whole thing went down. So these guys were lucky as hell they didn't die. I mean, so you have to, if you know the vagaries and the details of the story, I mean, they really, really got back to Earth on the skin of their teeth. I mean, it was really amazing. I mean, and also it's a testament to the engineers at NASA at that time that they pulled this off. And they didn't have any computers, basically, for all practical purposes. They used slide rules. So, and the other thing is, I have a former business partner of mine. His brother works for NASA, high level position there, and he's told me confidentially. He said, we couldn't go. They're going to go to the moon now, supposedly in like 26 or 27. This Artemis program. He told me a few years ago. He said, we couldn't go to the moon. We couldn't do Apollo now. There's too much bureaucracy here. We literally could. And this was a few years ago. He told me this, which is really, really sad. But anyway, those guys got back to Earth. It was 54 years ago today. So, and they were lucky as hell. All right, and then finally, and this is really fascinating. And I've talked about nuclear fusion on this show quite a lot. Fusion is not the same as fission. Nuclear fission is what happens in a standard nuclear reactor, and that creates power by splitting atoms. So the leftover, according to Einstein, and it's a proven theory now, that everything in the universe is either matter or energy, and if you bust up matter, you end up with energy, which is how nuclear reactors work. So, they split atoms, and that splitting the atom creates heat, and that heat heats water that turns turbines and produces electricity. Now, that's the standard way. Nuclear fusion is the opposite. You create energy by forcing atoms together, and you need either a shitload of pressure or a shitload of temperature to do it. It's very, very difficult. Right now, and they've been moving the goalposts on this, but right now they think we're going to have commercial nuclear fusion power in about 50 years because It's mind-bogglingly, ridiculously complex. And here, there's an article from the UK. The South Koreans have managed to. They created an artificial sun uh, through nuclear fusion that puts out that it burns at 100 million degrees Fahrenheit. Fahrenheit. Did you hear me? 100 million degrees, and they got it running for about 48 seconds, which is a record. And they're thinking, excuse me, in 2 years now they're thinking they're going to get up to 3 minutes. So, and that's and you're thinking, well, that's absurd. How do you do that? Well, here's the deal: you have to suspend this reaction within an electromagnetic force field. In other words, the reaction itself doesn't touch anything because it will melt and destroy anything that touches it physically. So you literally suspend it in midair. And that's what you would have to do to get this thing to produce power. Now, supposedly, a couple of years ago, was it last year or the year before? I can't remember. In France or in Europe, they actually created a nuclear fusion reaction that actually spit out more power than it took to start for the first time ever. That was a huge breakthrough because that means basically now we're on the way to doing it. Because yeah, until that happens, what's the point? If it's going to take more power to run the reaction than it does that it generates, well, you're not creating power, you know. But at any rate, this is really this is amazing stuff, and it's ridiculously complicated. It's unbelievable. But the good thing is, if they get it to work, it will permanently solve humanity's energy problems because you're basically be able to power the reactor off of regular, ordinary water, not even heavy water, just regular water. It will use any atoms you stick in there. So you pump in water, and not only does it even take a lot, you know. So, I was talking about Kathleen Martin, and Jeff and I were talking about these ET stuff, and this is I'm not familiar with this book series she's talking about, Conversations with God. I want to look that up. That's very interesting. Um, so the ETs have told Kathleen and other people apparently that they run their spacecraft off antimatter reaction. And that's the next step up from nuclear fusion. And that would basically be the last step in that sense of creating power. So antimatter reaction is you take matter, whatever it is, and has protons, and antimatter has antiprotons, and you put them in a room together and they annihilate each other. And you're thinking, well, that's not, how big a deal is that? Well, the thing is, like, you get one molecule or two molecules, actually, you need one of each to do this reaction, and you can basically like blow up half of the solar system. That's that's how much power is in this. It's mind-boggling. It's unbelievable. And supposedly they have been able to contain these reactions. Bob Lazar said that they contained it. He said he studied these crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft, and he said they contained it in something basically the size of a washing machine or a large microwave oven. It was not, but it was absolutely perfectly formed, and it would have to be because if there's any flaws in it, it will explode. Um, and and so yeah, they were able to contain this reaction in this tiny little box, basically. Well, relatively tiny. You look at a washing machine, you want 3 by 3 by 3, or something like that, you know. And he said they were able to do that. Now, we're I don't know how was it going to take us 10,000 years to do that? And that's the other thing too. So I'm looking forward to talking to Kathleen um, next week, and also Bruce. What's his name? Solheim too. Both of them, because I've said this before. You have to understand, if ETs are coming to Earth, and I'll tell you right now, they are. Whatever you can call me crazy. I don't care. I don't care at this point. I don't care because I know the government has these crashed extraterrestrial spacecraft. I know that. So that means there's ETs. So that means they're coming here. But where they're probably, you're talking about a whole bunch of different races. I mean, it appears right now that, I mean, we've been sitting here all alone on our little clump of dirt, but it's starting to look increasingly likely that not only is there life out in the universe, that it's abundant, that there's a lot of it. So, if that's the case, you're going to have species of ETs coming here anywhere from 200 to 100,000 years ahead of us. So if you're 200 years ahead of us, now I've said this and I'm going to stand by this. I think we humans will be flying faster than the speed of light by the end of this century. That's what I think. I actually think we'll do it before 2070, but I'm giving myself, and of course I won't be around to cash in on that. But yeah, I really do think that's true. I think in the next, I mean, NASA's already planning actual experiments in space to test this stuff. So there's a guy at NASA named a physicist named Sonny Houston, and he's already working on this. They're going to send up um a spacecraft, and I can't remember. It's Miguel. I never can remember this guy's name. It's Abercrombie or something like that. He's a Mexican physicist who came up with which is essentially called colloquially um, warp drive. It's the same thing that they use on Star Trek, and it's really amazing. When Star Trek came up with that idea, the theory behind it did not exist, but it turns out there is a theory behind it. So the way warp drive works is that you create an electromagnetic bubble around your spaceship, and the bubble is able to transcend time and space. And so because of that, technically you're not moving through space. The bubble is, but the bubble is bending this fucking space up, basically. So that's people say, well, how do you go that fast with humans in there? No, the thing is, if you're enclosed in this bubble, this electromagnetic force field bubble, no one inside the spacecraft can actually feel the acceleration. It feels like you're not moving because technically you aren't. And that's the way this works. But apparently NASA's already planning on putting up a spacecraft to test this. That they think they've already figured this out. So I actually think now it's going to be really interesting. In the Star Trek universe, humans busted the speed of light in 2050, and we might actually that might be the actual we might do that for the first time. Now that doesn't mean that we're going to be flying off to other galaxies in 50 years. It doesn't. But I mean, you got to start somewhere. So this is kind of like Chuck Yeager busting the sound barrier. I don't know if you ever read about that, but when he did it, he barely did it. I mean, I think he was going Mach 1.03 or something like that. He barely busted the sound barrier, but he did break it. So it counted, and there's a whole bunch of people who died trying to do it before he did it. So it's kind of the same deal. And why did I brought that up to talk about the fact. So yeah, so if you're annihilating antimatter, it's even worse than fusion. But we will probably have nuclear fusion power here, certainly within the end of the century, if not 50 years. Although, like I said, the bitch in this industry is they keep moving the goalposts. But I think 50 years actually probably is realistic. So tomorrow night, Leigh Robinson from the Brain Performance Center in Dallas. You see how I've been talking now for 90 minutes, and now it's a lot easier to talk. I tried to say that when we started, and I failed miserably. She's on tomorrow. We're taking next Monday off. We're going to do computer upgrades and internet upgrades here in the studio. So I'm actually looking forward to that. On Tuesday, it'll be interesting to see how this will work. And that's the other thing. I don't know how long it's going to take us to get our transmission here back up and running. It could take literally 10 minutes. It might take us hours. Who knows? So I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to even promise you or try to plan a show. So, but tomorrow night, Leigh Robinson, and on next Monday, we're off. So I want to thank you for watching. I want to thank Jeff Meyer for the Dead Horses edition of Jim Peters at Night. I hope Jennifer Oliver O'Connell's well. I hope she is. She did whatever. I hope she's fine. We'll talk to her, I'm sure. I'll let you know. I am Jim Peters. Good night, Esperanza. Good night, Uncle Donnie. And good night to you, wherever you are. We'll see you tomorrow night. Take care.